Welcome to our AFP webinar live stream, AI Without the Anxiety, Practical Ways Nonprofits Can Get Started, sponsored by CharityEngine. My name is David, and I'll be the operator for the presentation today. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acquaint you with a few features of this live stream technology. At any time, you may adjust your audio using your computer volume settings. For closed captions, click the CC icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the video player. Select English to enable closed captions. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the Audience Engagement window with navigational tabs at the top. The Chat tab allows audience members to communicate with one another. To send a message to the audience chat, click in the text box and type your comment. To send the comment, press the Enter key or the Send icon. The Q&A polling tab is where you will ask the presenters questions. You will need to enter your first and last name to participate in polls or to ask a question. To ask a question, click in the text box and type your question. When finished, press the Enter key or click the paper airplane icon to send the question. All questions that you submit are only seen by today's presenters. Your questions will be responded to in the order in which they were received and will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available within 3 to 5 business days in your Path Learning Management System account, where you are watching today's live stream. Handouts are available under the Resources tab under your video player. We are joined today by our speaker, Shruti Ramaswami. Shruti is the EVP of Strategic Relationships and Strategy at TechSoup. In her role, Shruti helps TechSoup's overall strategy with a goal of supporting the evolving needs of the nonprofit sector. Shruti works with companies and organizations to distribute necessary technology and engage with the civil society sector in order to create more resiliency, security, and efficiency. Before TechSoup, she was a managing consultant within IBM's public sector practice, focusing on customer relationship management solutions. At this time, I would like to turn the microphone over to Shruti to begin today's webinar.
Thank you, David. Really quickly, let me jump in. I'm Julie from CharityEngine. Thank you to AFP for having us today. For those of you who may not know us, CharityEngine is an all-in-one nonprofit CRM. We bring fundraising, marketing, payments, and donor data together in one platform so nonprofits don't have to juggle a bunch of separate tools. When everything lives in one place, your system can learn from that data. Instead of just storing donor records, it can start surfacing insights that help fundraisers focus their time and build stronger donor relationships. And that's where AI starts to become really powerful. So what does AI really look like in a nonprofit CRM? I'll tell you what it looks like in our technology. It can help recommend outreach, predict who's most likely to give, suggest smarter ask amounts, and even help write campaign content. Behind the scenes, it can also help recover failed recurring payments, update expired credit cards, and protect against fraud. So AI is not just a buzzword. It's already helping nonprofits raise more and operate more efficiently. And that's why I'm really excited for today's conversation with Shruti Ramaswami from TechSoup, who works with nonprofits to help them adopt AI in practical and safe ways. Shruti, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you to the whole team here. I'm really excited to be able to speak with you all a little bit more about AI and really focus on practical ways that we can all get started in leveraging AI, particularly for use in fundraising and for nonprofits. Now, today, the goals of our discussion is really to better understand how to use AI tools to reduce your busy work, to increase your productivity, and do so without sacrificing any of the uniqueness of your voice and the trust and security that your donors place in you. I'm hoping that today you'll leave today's session with a few examples that you can get started with right away, and then learn some steps to take to protect your data and learn how to use AI safely. I will just caveat this right now and say today is not meant to be a technical deep dive, but really a foundational overview that can really help you practically. I'm going to be speaking for just a few minutes about TechSoup, the organization that I'm with, a little bit about some overview of some of the AI tools and how it can be used. And then I'm going to spend most of our time today actually demoing and doing a couple of examples live with you. So just know that everything hopefully will work out fine, but you're going to just see things live the way that anybody would be using an AI tool, because that's what we're going to be doing today. And then I'll try to reserve time, about 20 minutes at the end, to make sure that we can go through your questions and answer as many as we can. During that time, I will be joined by my colleague, Stephen Jackson, who's the Chief of Staff for Strategy and Communications at TechSoup. And together we will tackle as many questions as possible. So I am with TechSoup, and hopefully many of you know TechSoup already, but TechSoup is a global nonprofit. Our goal is to equip change makers with the transformative technology solutions and skills that they need to improve their lives globally and locally. What we do in our mission is really there to make sure that nonprofits around the world have access to technology so that they can be more tech-enabled, more resilient, more efficient, and more secure. We work with hundreds of thousands of organizations globally every year, and we do so through training, through distribution of technology solutions, and education. And so a lot of the materials that we'll go through today are things that we are hearing from nonprofits all the time, tools that are available to nonprofits, and based off of some of the survey and information that we've had from the nonprofits that we've worked with. Actually, last year, we did a survey in conjunction with TAP Network, and we did that with about 1,500 US nonprofits to understand how people were leveraging and using AI. And what we resoundingly saw was that many people, and I think this has increased even since we did this 6 months ago, have already started leveraging AI. So 50% of nonprofit workers are already using AI in their work. What they're really excited by, what they're leveraging, is thinking about how they can leverage AI to be more efficient, more productive, and more effective. And the key areas that people really gravitated towards in using AI tools has been in grant writing assistance, fundraising optimization, and social media and marketing automation. So obviously key things that fundraising professionals like yourselves are going to be keenly interested in as well. While organizations are using AI, what we did also find in our survey was that many organizations or many individuals are using AI tools to do their work, but it's not necessarily something that the organization has created a policy around, or there's a lot of strategy behind. And so what we want to try to do today is bring a little bit more structure to that and think about how we can actually use AI-enabled tools to assist in some of the fundraising work that we all have. And today I'm going to be talking about mostly generative AI. There are many versions of AI. And what I'm talking a little bit more about is generative AI tools. So tools that are available to help you create something, create text, create images, create documents, follow instructions. There are other kind of uses of AI that are available. Agentic AI that is really working behind systems and through systems, but really the focus of today is going to be on generative AI. So when we think about how AI tools can support, I really think about how it can support across this fundraising cycle itself. So within the fundraising cycle, we have key things that we need to do. There's identification, qualification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. And when we think about the functions that we can use that AI can support, we kind of see them in a few different areas, and those are the 4 areas that I'm going to highlight in some demos today. The first one is in donor communications, and it's probably something that many of you have already used, which is how can I draft a first communication, draft an email, draft a post that really helps me communicate with donors that I have, or help understand how I can reach out to new donors. There's also the personalization aspect of it. How can I leverage AI tools to better make sure that I'm personalizing a template or personalizing a message based off of something that a donor has done, or something that the recipient of whatever information I have would be relevant to them? Those types of AI tools and usage of AI, I would consider as you're working as a first draft, you're working to edit documents, you're working on being able to craft messages. And it is supporting you, it's helping you in your productivity and efficiency. But then there are other AI tools that I want to highlight and use cases too. The third one is planning. So you can really leverage AI as a assistant to you, as a thinker, as an opportunity to share ideas, bounce ideas back with. And a lot of times it's really helpful to be able to have someone to kind of spar with and be able to say, how should I create a fundraising strategy, and what should that look like for this audience? And I don't think this is the right way to do it. Can we do it in a different way? And actually have that AI tool kind of work with you to plan and strategize on how you can kind of do something new. And then the last one is analysis. A lot of times we're looking at large amounts of data. You're looking at different kind of pools of past donations, past donors, past grants. And what AI can help do with is analyze that very quickly to free up your time so that you're focusing on the trends and not focusing necessarily on just the data itself. So with that, I'm going to try to move us into demo. And so, like I said, please be patient. I'm hoping that this will work well. And it'll give you an opportunity really to see some of the tools in action. And I'm going to try to do a couple of different tools today so that you can see the differences between some of the AI tools that are available. And let me start sharing that really quickly. All right. So the first area I'm going to really focus on is donor communications. So on this, let's say the first thing you want to do is get a solid first draft of your donor communications. So I'm going to just write, and the first tool that I'm using and showcasing here is ChatGPT. A few things to know about this. I'm not logged in. I'm not paying for anything. So everything that you're seeing on my screen right now is what you would typically see if you are just using a free version of ChatGPT. So I'm just going to have a very basic question. I did write down the prompts before so that I'm not wasting everybody's time here watching me type. But I said, help me draft communications to potential donors to tell them about TechSoup and tell them that their donation matters. So it's a very simple prompt. I'm going to put that in and you're going to see the AI tool is going to start working and start putting that together. Now, like I said, I'm not logged in. I don't have any responses before. It's not saving any of my chats before. So I've given it a very generic prompt. And the only thing that I really said was that I'm from TechSoup or I want to do this on behalf of TechSoup. So the AI engine now is going to go and find information publicly that's available to be able to draft a donor communication. So what I got back as a response is a few things. One is a short outreach email. And that you can see in some of the language here that it got our mission pretty well. It talked a little bit about what their donation enables, which is pretty good based off of what TechSoup does and what is publicly available about us. But they've also done a couple of different versions of this. There's a short email. There's a longer donor email that has a story, has impact in there. And then there's also this like short LinkedIn message or a DM message. And all of these are really great first starts. So if I wanted to, I could just take these messages right now, copy and paste it, and I can copy and paste in these little icons that are right here. And I can put it into a document and start editing myself. A lot of times, this first draft itself takes a lot of time when you're thinking about doing something new or you're using a template. So having somebody write that first draft is actually super helpful, and then you can be the editor. But the other thing I would say is that this is an opportunity to really learn how to refine prompts. So I basically gave no information, right? I just made it very, very clear, but very, very unclear, I should say. But if I wanted to add clarity to this and see like, how can I refine this message even further? What's important to me is that I add more in the context that I'm providing to the tool itself. So in the next prompt that I've created, it's really built off of the same thing. But what I'm saying is take on a role of a member of my development team. I want to draft an email to potential donors. So I'm telling them I want an email and I want them to know that their donation matters. I want the email to be no longer than 500 words. I want to make sure that the audience knows how their donation is going to support, what our results are. We just publish an annual report, and here's the website for it. And then I want them to specifically go to our donation page. And I also say I want the tone to be professional, and I don't want there to be any exaggerations. I want everything to feel like it's from our voice. And what I've done is created an opportunity for the AI tool to be able to tailor the message and tailor its output based off of the constraints that I've set. And what I get as a result of that is a much clearer message. So what I can see here is already in this message, I can see that it's really taken data from our annual report. It says, hey, we've connected to 305,000. We're operating in 218 countries. Here's what we're doing. Here's a place where I can put in my link for donations. Here's some of the critical tools and some of the things that we're working on that your donation is going to go towards. And it really provided us just an email. So the key things to remember when you're drafting anything to be able to get to a point where you feel like it's much more clear and it's much more relevant for your audience is to define your context. Make sure you know who your audience is. Say that. Say the goal of the communication. Provide reference points. So in this prompt here, I actually added in our annual report website. So I said you can look at that as a place to get information from, and I want it to be pulling from these areas. I specified the voice. I want it to be professional and friendly. I want it to use language the way that we use it on our site. I specified the constraints, which are what are the things that I want to be true. So I want it to be an email. I want it to be less than 500 words. I want it to pull from these resources, and the output format that I'm looking for. So I have been able to, just in these kind of areas of just prompts, get a much better language. And the thing I would always recommend too is like most AI solutions will just say, hey, I just did what you asked me, but I have some ideas for you to dig into more. So on this one, it says, let's tighten the words a little bit. Do you want a stronger call to action? Do you want a subject line that's going to improve your open rates? Should I draft up a follow-up email for those people who don't respond? So it's already trying to help you in the process flow to say, how do you want to refine this better? And this is a really good opportunity to start that kind of sparring that you would do with an AI tool to get you to the outcome that you're really looking for. So you can take advantage of some of the prompts that they've asked and start going back and forth to refine that message even more. Or you can create new prompts to say, actually, I want to do something else. And that's what I'm going to do for the next one, which is the personalization. So on the next kind of way, and I'll stay with ChatGPT right now, I might say, well, I want to personalize this for a specific donor. And this is somebody maybe who's donated before, or I can provide information on this is all of the donations that they've done before. So it provides some context. For this one, I'm going to be a little generic and so I don't use anybody else's name and information, I'm going to use myself. So I live in Montclair, New Jersey. So I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig here. And I'm going to say, can you personalize this message that we've just created for me or a donor named Shruti? And I'm going to specify that I mean this donor from Montclair, New Jersey, and take a look at her research, what's available online about her, where does she, support, what kind of nonprofits does she support, so that this reads more like a one-on-one note, but still preserves some of the core message that we just talked to. And I specify that this is somebody who's actually donated to us before. So as I put that prompt in, what I'm doing is setting that context, setting that voice. I'm setting the constraints of it to be able to say, this is what she's done, and here's what I want you to do to be able to refine and personalize this message. And I'm saying that the output formula that I want is still an email. Now, it's going to take a little longer for it to do that because I'm asking it to do some research first, and I'm asking it to kind of update the messaging that they already just did. So if you can see, hopefully this is large enough, but what you see in the prompts right now is that the AI tool will also tell you what it's doing and how it came up with something. So what they say is, hey, I found out that Shruti lives in Montclair. She's working with these local nonprofits. She cares about these kind of areas based off of the things that she's working and volunteering her time on. And here's the alignment areas from what TechSoup actually is working on that's available publicly as well. So you'll see that the message now is tailored to bring in some of those components to make those threads a little bit more clear. And it gives you, again, a really good first draft for us to say, okay, well, now I can look at this and say, how do I make this a little bit better? How do I tailor it? Or if I know the donor, I might want to make it more personal from my own knowledge and information. But it provides me a really, really good starting place. And I've taken down the time that I would normally spend on this significantly. And if you think about it, the more and more comfortable you get with AI tools, you can start providing more context as well, right? So everything I've just done here, again, has been in a free version, has not provided any sensitive information. I haven't provided anything that is not publicly available data right now. But what I'm going to try to shift to in the next couple of examples is showing versions of the tool and the outputs of tools when you're logged in and when it's associated with a work account. Now, when I talk a little bit about that, I just want to explain the differences because if you're working for a nonprofit, or if you're in development, if you're fundraising for a nonprofit and you have a nonprofit account, or your nonprofit that you're working with is in a Google Workspace, or they use Microsoft, or they use specific tools, being able to have an enterprise account or a nonprofit account in that way helps because everything gets associated and saved. And the more an AI tool knows about you through your prompts, through the questions that you're asking, through the refinements that it makes, the more it learns. And so it is helpful a lot of times for you to think about the differentiation between an unlogged in state and a logged in state as just an understanding of history. So the more history you provide it, the more opportunity you also provide the tool to be able to learn and to be able to learn about your voice and your tone and your role. And once you add a layer of the element of your organizational component too, it unlocks other things. So if you have a Gemini account for a Google Workspace, or if you have a Copilot account for a Microsoft Workspace, if you're on a work sanctioned kind of account, what it also does is it is able to pull from all of the other things that you have in your productivity suite. So it can pull from documents, it can pull from things to provide a lot more guidance, a lot more support, and a lot more relevance based off of the information that you're providing. The other thing I will just say about the logged in versus unlogged in state is that everything that I'm doing in an unlogged in state that is not associated with an organizational account, even if I'm just an individual user that is logged in, but I don't have a organizational account, most of the time that information, the prompts that you're putting in, the information that you're suggesting will actually be able to be leveraged by the AI tool for learning and for its own development. Now, there's a differentiation there. So when you're in an organizational account, it is only for your own organization. And so that's an important component when you're thinking about different data that you might be using. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into an example for planning. And just for the sake of doing something different, I'm going to use Google's Gemini tool. So I'm moving from ChatGPT world free to a Gemini tool. And you'll see here that I'm logged into my TechSoup account. You can kind of see that in the little browser on the end. I'm already logged into my TechSoup account. So it knows who I am. It's stored my chats from before. It has an understanding of who I am and what I'm doing. And I'm going to say, I want to plan a fundraising campaign. So I'm going to provide a little bit of information knowing that the context helps. I'm going to ask it to say, let's see. I'm going to say, help me plan an online fundraiser. Let's not get this prompt working. See. Okay. I'm going to ask it to help me plan an online fundraiser. I'm going to provide some of the context that I think is going to be the most important for the fundraiser itself. I have some constraints that I know of. I want to create a practical campaign that a small team can execute with clear messaging, deliverables, and measurable outcomes. I would like to use email, social media, and our website. And I want to make sure that the call to action leads people to actually go to our donation page, and that I want to define the time frame in which I have, which is I want to do this in a 2-month period. And my overall goal is to raise about $10,000 across individuals. So I'm providing a ton of different constraints for the AI tool to be able to leverage and use, so that I can be really clear. But I'm not providing much more, and it's not structured in any way. And the beauty of using some of these AI tools is that you can use your natural language, and that tool recognizes it and provides structure to it, which is very helpful. I think for me, it's like really saved a bunch of time for me to think about, oh, I should have done this in an Excel sheet, or I should have done this in a table, and I should have formatted and thought about it in a different way. But the tool really does that. So it takes kind of my brain dump and it helps me create an actual structured plan. So here it says, okay, well, let's see, overall campaign. Let's do a duration of 8 weeks. Here's the resourcing and budget. Here's some, for a small team, you'll probably need a lead, a content creator. Let's think about what are the phases for execution. So it gives me opportunities to have a prep time, to launch it, to provide mid-campaign pushes. And then it also gives me measurable outcomes and KPIs. And so this is a really good starting point. So I can take this, and maybe some of it is good, maybe some of it doesn't work so well, but I can use that to be able to say, okay, how do I best, take this and tailor it myself? And part of it might be that this is good enough for me to start and I can play around with it now. But I would really recommend that we just refine, probe, and ask and kind of refine that as much as possible. It can help me to be able to get to the next layer. So if I were to say, I actually want to create a vision board for this design using TechSoup branding. Because this is my work account, it already knows a little bit about our TechSoup branding. So I can say, can you just help me think about what I should give to designers, or what I should give to the team to be able to make sure that it stays within our branding guidelines? And it does so. It tells us the colors that I need, the design concepts, and the more information that you're asking, the more you can get out of it. And like I said, some of it might be relevant, some of it might not be, and you can kind of choose and decide what works for your organization and what's the most important for you to focus on. Let's see. The other thing that you could do is actually think about different ways that you can create visuals. So visuals can be really, really helpful. And it is often a very hard thing to create if you're not a designer, if you don't have design tools. But one of the things you'll see in many of these tools right now is like you can request the output. So you can say, I would like a slide coming out of this. I would like a picture coming out of this. I would love like this social media copy that actually has posts. And you'll, I'm sure, recognize some of these icons and some of these things because you've probably seen them in a LinkedIn post here or there. So there's some dead giveaways, and that's like very important as well to recognize, is you don't want your things to read like somebody else has written it. So you want to be able to refine, you want to be able to use your authentic language, but it's a really good first start for you guys to start thinking about, okay, well, how do I refine this? And how do I, make sure that I can use this as a jumping point to get started? And that's what, the focus really is how do you improve your productivity? How can you improve your efficiency? But you really don't want to lose your authentic voice in that process either. The last demo I'm going to show is a little bit more about analysis. So in order to be able to do this, I've used dummy data here. Thanks to Stephen, who helped me create that. But I'm going to go to Copilot this time. Copilot is the tool that is built off of the same technology as ChatGPT, but it is really paired specifically with your Microsoft account. So you'll see here, and I didn't log in yet just to show you that there's a version and experience that you can choose. You can choose an experience that is associated with your work account or a personal account. And either way, you will have a different experience. When I choose personal, I'm just talking about it for me. It's not associated with any of my work emails, work calendar, work documents. It's just on a personal level, similar to the ChatGPT experience I showed before. But when I show work, what I'm able to do is actually use a version that is going to be really focused on knowing who I am, knowing my association at work, my role at work, and making sure that it's pulling in all of that context. Oh, there you go. I have to do an authentication. Sorry. Let's see if I can do that. Let's go with the text. But actually showing this is actually very helpful too, because one of the things that's really important to realize here is I'm logging in and I'm securing it in my work account, which means that everything in here is now only associated with that. It's not public. It's not being used for anything public. It's only being used in my work account and from the work data that I'm showing. So when I go in here, I can, you can see all my past things. You can see all of the other things that I have done here, and how I've used it. Let's see. So I'm going to ask for some trends, and I'm going to give it a reference file. Like I said, it's a dummy file here, but it's going to say, what are some of the trends in the grant data, and how should I think about future grants given this? And the prompt is simple, right? I'm not putting a lot in there. I'm just saying, you tell me what I should be focused on. But what I am going to do is select the specific content that I want it to look at. So here you'll see it's like it's syncing in with all of my OneDrive, my OneNote, all of my things. So I can pull any file that I want that's already in my system that I use every day. I've chosen this grant application and I'm putting that in there. So analysis, I will say, will take longer because it's doing more work. And it'll tell you how it's doing it. So it's going to be using coding, execution. It's going to go through things and start saying, what are some of the key trends that I'm seeing? And then hopefully shoot us out an output that is useful. So a couple of things to remember is that, again, these systems learn. So the more relevant the data, the better the learnings. And because I'm logged into my account, it will also think about, well, is this something that I should pull from other things that I know you're doing or not? And it might ask some questions around the way. And it's really important here that safety and security matter. So if I am putting and giving reference to any document, anything that has donor data, donor information, I am making sure that I am logged in. I am making sure that I am in my professional account because I want to make sure it stays in that workspace. So what I get back as an analysis is I get right there portfolio level trends. So it says, hey, volume is steady, but here's some outcomes and ask sizes that are moved. Here's the key things that were awarded and the average request size from each of the years of the data that you had. Here's where you're winning. Here's where you're not winning. Here's the kind of areas and success rates that you've seen. By geo, here's the percentage that you've won, and here's some of the stark differences that I've seen here. And it provides some interpretation where it says, hey, LATAM and APAC are really hard areas for you to convert in, but you're this, so it might be a good opportunity for you to redesign or think about future grant opportunities. There's restricted versus unrestricted, funder signals, and it's providing interpretation of that data for you to think about and signal. And I just want to give you like an overview. This is the data that I provided. There was nothing much in there, right? It was just, here's the ID, funder name, category, year, the grant amount, the program area, the geography, the grant type and outcome. But it's just a sheet of data, which all of us pretty much have. But instead of me having to go through this and kind of think about, okay, let me create a pivot table or let me write a couple of statements to see what I could do or create graphs, the tool has done that for me. And that can be really, really helpful for a few reasons. One, it saves tremendous amount of time. And it allows you also to provide insights that you may have missed because of the function of the tool that you know. So if I didn't know to do a pivot in this way or to compare these two things together, I may have missed something that could be a genuine insight. And the other thing is it's looking at, because it's in my work account, it knows some of the context of other things I'm doing. So it can say, hey, you're showing some symbols here, but I know that you're working on other grants in this area and this, specific program, maybe those go together. So it's a really, really powerful way for you to take data and use it. And very, like, I see it as a huge use case for those people who feel that they are not the data people. They don't know, they're not comfortable in Excel, or they're not comfortable, like, playing around with it. It gives people an opportunity to level that playing field a little bit so everybody can be more data enabled. And I think that can be a really powerful tool and a powerful kind of support system to really, really be able to look at your data more effectively and efficiently, and more people in your organization to do so as well. So I am going to stop there. I'm going to share a few things just to summarize what we've talked about, and then really hopefully spend most of our time on the questions and answers that you might have. So let me go back and I just summarize a little bit about what we have talked about, particularly between the differences and how to think about when to use different tools, and how to think about when to pay for a tool and not. So there are many, many tools available. There are tools that are the general assistants. There are tools like if you're in Zoom or if you're in Teams, you'll see little pop-ups that say like, use my AI companion or my AI enabler, and they might do things within the tool itself. And like I said before, there's automation. But when you're thinking about what to use and when, you really need to think about what data that you're using, what are the functions that you're using it for, and what do you want your outcome to be. And the biggest thing I would say is you want to do things that are based off of your normal everyday operations. So you probably are already paying for tools that include AI capabilities. You are probably already using, if you're a Google workspace house and all of your information is in Google, it might be advantageous for you to use Gemini to be able to leverage some of those things that you're already leveraging and using. If you're a Microsoft and everybody is using Microsoft to share documents, and that's where you're using SharePoint for things, it's probably helpful to use Copilot to do that, because you will be able to leverage all of that insight, all of the resource and context to build that out. And the biggest thing I would say is really make sure you're reading the data privacy, and make sure that when you are providing any information that is specific to your organization, specific to your beneficiaries, includes any type of name or any type of amount or anything like that, that you are in a logged in state that is associated and secure, so that it's not being used to use other learnings and can be made available in some other public way, and that you're protecting the privacy of the beneficiaries that you have. The other thing I would just say is, and this is like a big plug from TechSoup, I would say, because the biggest thing that we see is that people are using AI individually. And though that can really unlock a bunch of productivity for one person, it makes it feel like there does not need to be formal policies. And that formal policies in your organization or in the organizations that you're working with are really, really important. You want to make sure that your organization is going to have some formal rules and guidelines to help the individuals on your team know what AI tools to use, how to use them, and what you consider secure across your organization. Because otherwise, people can make very innocent mistakes while using an unlogged in state or sharing data in a tool that your security team may not have vetted. And so what I would just really stress is that you have to think about the real value that an organization can get using AI, and make sure that you're thinking about security, collaboration, and the cost savings that you can really have. For many of us who are in this space, trust is everything. Trust is the currency that we really operate on for our beneficiaries, for each other, for our funders, for our donors. And so you want to take advantage of all of the incredible benefits that AI can use, but there's a real risk. And so you can make sure to mitigate against that by just having some clear policies in place and planning in place to be able to protect yourself. So the key things I would think about are donor privacy boundaries, setting up and making sure that it's part of the policy for anybody who's leveraging AI to do human reviews before sending, before publishing, before looking at it, to make sure you're looking at source of truth for fact checking, particularly when you're using parts of AI where you're asking it to do external research or looking at things, it's really important to look at it. AI solutions can absolutely hallucinate, and you want to make sure that you're getting the good parts of AI, but not taking in everything else. And you have to be able to bring in that human element to make sure that you're doing that. And that includes biases checks. And the other thing I would say is a disclosure policy. So it's very important to maintain the trust that you have with people. So telling people, hey, this is something that I've used AI for, or a published document, or a new workflow, I want to be able to disclose that AI was used in it to support that. And then always to have an approved list so that everybody in your organization or anybody who's on your fundraising team or development team knows what tools they can use, and start creating opportunities for training and sharing so that you're sharing prompts with each other, you're sharing templates with each other, and that can really help aid in being able to facilitate and unlock some of the opportunity and mitigate some of the risk. I know that sounds like a lot and it seems like a couple steps away, but even a very basic policy is a good starting point. And at TechSoup, we've published our own policy as a nonprofit. We're in the same boat. So a lot of times, so we've published our own policy, and we've also made a template. So you can click on the link. It's in your resources that you have on your LMS. And you can use that and just fill out a template, and you can at least use it to start developing a tool and a policy for your organization if you don't already have one. And if you're a consultant working with organizations, you should ask them for theirs. If you're doing any fundraising on behalf of an organization, you should make sure that you're still complying with the policies and the goals and the protections that they're putting in place, so that there's no donor risk at hand. The last thing I will just say is we spent a very little amount of time. I hope it was helpful. And I'm excited to go into the questions and answers, but there's a lot more material at TechSoup. We're a nonprofit, like I said. You can go and try to peruse some of the content, the courses, the how-to guides, all of those things, and get more information on specific tools or specific prompts or things like that at any place. So you can feel free to use that as a resource. Hopefully we can put that link. It is in your slides, but we'll try to put it into chat as well. And I'm going to invite my colleague, Stephen, to join so that we can start answering some of your questions.
Hi there. Nice to see you out here, Shruti, and nice to meet everybody here on the webinar. I am Stephen Jackson. I'm the Chief of Staff of Strategy and Communications here at TechSoup, and I'm very excited to chat with Shruti about a topic that frankly has transformed the way that I work in my role as a nonprofit. And so I'll get right into the questions that we're seeing. There's so many good ones. So thank you all for bringing these really important ideas to the forefront. So one thing that I'm seeing in a lot of the initial questions, Shruti, has to do with safety and security, right? So is there, first of all, could you talk a little bit about the type of information you would want to not put into an AI tool due to donor privacy reasons? And then let's extend that a little bit to a best practice and any sort of general working ideas of what sort of content people should be wary of putting into an AI system, even if it is a workplace account.
Yeah, great question. The biggest thing I would say is anything that seems personally identifiable, I would just not do it, right? Unless there's a specific need, I don't think you ever really need to put in anybody's specific name, anybody's specific address, anybody's specific donation, or definitely not banking and information, things like that. Like, there are not reasons, and I would always err on the side of caution. If you do not need to have certain data, if you don't need to collect certain data, and if you don't need to, it's not going to change the output, I would not put that data anywhere. You want to be as careful as you can. And those personally identifiable information, particularly when many of us are supporting vulnerable communities, is really, really important to make sure that you're protecting. Even if you're in a work account, accidents happen. You might like slip into your personal by accident, or you might have shared a document that you didn't mean to. Like, that's not necessary, and you don't want to take risks that you don't need to have. I don't know, Stephen, if you would add anything to that.
No, yeah, I agree. I think it's always erring on the side of caution. Nonprofits, as we know, are a highly targeted sector for cybercrime, and so as stewards of both our beneficiaries and our donors' information, we have to be take that extra step to be careful. So, no, I would have nothing to add there. Um, I think again there was a lot of other questions around privacy,
Sure.
risks, etc. But let me see here. So here's an interesting question. One person has quote sunk a lot of data into their ChatGPT environment, and then they want to switch over to Copilot.
Mhm.
Once you switch LLMs and switch models, is there any sort of does that person have to build their persona again from
Yeah.
scratch?
That's a little like, so there are actual ways that you can port some of that. That's a lot of the new developments on MCP servers and the protocols that are saying, how does the portability of my persona work are developing. ChatGPT, like I said, is actually part of the inherent backend of Copilot. So there may be ways that you can port that. I don't know them, but I can look into that. And I know that that's some of the work that, is being done right now is how do I take that identity with me when I'm using different tools? So I think that is possible. I will say it's a quick learner,
Mhm.
so the ability to kind of do that again or just share certain reference points or share certain documents or outputs that you've done in the past and say, hey, learn from my previous chats or learn from this can be pretty quick.
Yeah.
And it is not a huge amount of retraining you have to do for it to be consumable and useful for you moving forward, regardless of what you're choosing.
Totally. And I'd add to that that
Yeah.
if you're moving over into a Copilot workplace account, you would take a look at a lot of your source documents that you're giving kind of the larger context to the tool, and just reshare them in Copilot. So if you have an annual report, like a public-facing annual report that gives the overview of the story of your organization and your impact. That's a great thing you can immediately put into Copilot. That's going to familiarize the tool with your unique viewpoint and your mission as a nonprofit, etc. Certainly, by just interacting with the tool, it's learning from every single chat, and you're building that persona. And that goes to a different question too, where folks are asking about setting up a persona
Mhm.
within the tool and how to best use them.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that a little bit, Trudy?
Yeah. And I will say, like, as a user, I would say, who leverages AI pretty much on a daily basis, I would not say I have spent a ton of time like cultivating a persona. I've let the AI tool do that for me. There are others, Stephen is one of them who does that a lot better than I do. Our CEO is one of them who's created different personas to say, like, these are the roles I take in the organization. So here's reference points to build for that. Or when I am giving a prompt, I would say, today I'm taking on my role because I might have many hats. Many of us at nonprofits do. So today I'm my IT admin. Tomorrow I'm going to be our fundraiser. Today I'm our program development. So creating some of that context to say, hey, here's all of the information that's relevant for that person. When I'm saying I am a development person, I'm referencing all of these things in
Mhm.
my account. When I say I'm going to be the IT administrator, here's the tools I'm working, here's what I'm doing. And I might be asking questions of like, how do I implement multi-factor authentication for my user? So I might have a very different kind of output in what I do there versus the things that I are going to have like external personas and stuff. So really it's about creating information that's going to be helpful for the context of the AI to provide more relevant results to you. But for me, as an example, I don't do that very well. I should. But I basically just say it each time in my prompt.
Yeah. And to add on to that, there's a couple really simple things you could play with if you have ChatGPT, the paid version, or if you have Gemini. In Gemini, there's a thing called Gems, and in ChatGPT, a similar thing is creating a ChatGPT project. Really quickly, essentially what you're doing is you're creating a smaller chat environment where you can upload very specific documents. So, for example, your annual report, etc., or really great posts from your CEO on LinkedIn that you want it to sort of grab the organizational voice in a certain way, right? And you can create that within a project or a gem and give that gem very specific and discrete instructions. And then that in itself will save that persona in a really very pretty light touch way. So, and again, then as you're working within that gem or project, the project itself learns on its own track as opposed to, this sort of global environment that you're working in, which is also always learning from your interactions.
Yeah. One of the questions that I saw come up here a little, so maybe we could talk about that a bit, is that some grant funders, some are using technology to see how much AI content you're using and how much is yours, and how do you use that feature, how do you think about it? And I think it's really important to stress here again is that the usage of AI here is not necessarily for you to not have authentic content yourself, right? It's to be able to aid you in creating it. So a large part of that I think is helpful is also referencing and providing references to the AI tool in what information you want them to use. So when I'm using information that is from content that I've already created, from my own grant reports, from my own grant results, or from my annual report, that's pulling information that I have already done and created, but the AI tool is creating a narrative for it or helping it. So when it's looking at that, it's still my content. It's just I'm leveraging AI to create that, to summarize it, to present it better, to help me think about it better. So when you're doing things like that, particularly for grant applications, giving enough reference points and context that is your own voice is super important. And again, I will just stress, I would never, ever, ever recommend anytime sharing anything that is coming out of an AI tool that you have not reviewed and gone through yourself and made sure that it is authentic to you, it is relevant, and that it is factual. Particularly, there was another question about how do you know some tells that have been used by AI. I'll just say that there's definitely there's a lot of threads on this on LinkedIn, particularly the use of a rocket. There's certain icons that are very clearly AI driven. In enthusiasm that is overwhelming
Yeah.
and that doesn't feel authentic to your normal tone and voice, it comes across. The other one that people call out a lot is the big M dash, the usage
Yeah.
of certain kind of grammatical things that you wouldn't necessarily use in every day. Those are the type of tells that people really see, and images, and there's a lot of really good software that can tell really quickly on video editing, AI images, things like that. It's making it harder, but I'm assuming we're not really using some of those things. But Stephen, you've seen that a lot more in some of your roles. I'd love for you to talk about that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, RIP to the M dash. I love the M dash so much as a writer. And when I saw that, I do authentically use it. So when I
Yeah.
saw that it was suddenly this tell, I was like, oh. But yeah, I think structurally you can tell a lot too. I think LLMs really love to do output in like a short paragraph, a header, sentence, colon, bullet, colon, sentence, right? And I think that's structurally you can start to tell that very easily. A sneaky one actually that I've been noticing is bolding. So the output, especially Gemini, really loves to bold key phrases in output paragraphs. And so you'll notice that is the case where suddenly a paragraph has, and again, sometimes that's an ineffective tool that folks will use authentically, and sometimes you want to leave it in. But it goes back to Shruti's main point that, it's great for first drafts. Our recommendation is to never wholesale just put out something that your tool used. You always have, there's a big concept called, the human in the loop, right? And that's the case for these larger systems when they're doing really complex back-end processes. But I think that best practice holds true for individual users to say, this is a tool, it's a game-changing tool. It has, as I said at the top, it's changed the way I work as a nonprofit professional. Every single thing that I do with AI, and that's a lot, I read it like cover to cover. And I will
Absolutely.
almost always find something that I can personalize and have it be my voice. I think that the tolerance level for a lot of these first draft of AIs has gone up significantly in the
Yeah.
industry and in business in general. But I think that the onus is still on us to take it and truly personalize it.
Yeah.
And then you are really using it as that thing you were saying earlier, Shruti, as this companion, as this
Yeah.
thought companion.
Um, Absolutely. I totally agree with all of that. And I think, when you're thinking about how and when to use it, there's a lot of great questions, and there's so many more questions that we are not going to be able to get into. But I will put in our chat, maybe Stephen, you can put in the chat our email addresses so anybody can contact us, and we're happy to be a resource as well. But one of the questions I saw a lot about is just like the typical cost range. And so I do want to say that it depends for sure. Most of them are fairly, on an affordable side. So, and many of them have nonprofit discounts. So I just want to make that clear. So Google Workspace, that if you have a nonprofit account, Google Workspace is often free for certain kind of plans, and it includes Gemini in that. So if you have nonprofit accounts that you're already using, a lot of those tools are already enabled and are within the pricing that you already pay. If you're thinking about ChatGPT, there is a nonprofit price available. I believe it's about $20 a month per user, but it's typically in that range of pricing, $20 to $30 a month per user. And I believe Claude, uh, Copilot, ChatGPT all have nonprofit pricing. So if you're working with somebody who is at a nonprofit, I would really make sure that they're taking advantage of those offers that are available. Sometimes it's not really published very well, so search for it. Make sure that you're taking advantage of any discount that is available to you. And I would say there was another question here is like, and I think this is a typical behavior, not one that I'm purporting in any way, but that people share accounts. If you share an account, it will confuse, right? You can't really set up those types of personas in that same way. So I would think about it as an individual here. And it's because it's learning from the prompts that they have and things like that. There are opportunities like to share some of those personas with different people so that you can continue to have different or consistent messaging. So Stephen has created a few personas. Our CEO has created a few personas and shared it with us to say, hey, when we're talking about this, I want to make sure that it's using this type of voice and this type of thing. And if you're using it, here's the types of things I think about or contacts that I have. So you can do that. But I will really say that AI, and particularly on these tools, individual accounts within an enterprise are pretty important, and you don't necessarily want the sharing in the same way because you can share the prompts, you're sharing certain things and all of that. And so privacy is pretty important on those areas. And I know we're closer to time. There is one question that I saw as well, a few questions on environmental impact. And I don't want to, you know, claim that everything here is doing the best thing for the environment. And there are certain tools and there are certain companies that have made pledges. But I would say if you're making a decision and it needs to be authentic to your mission, it needs to be authentic to who you are as an organization and the donors that you're working with, I would definitely choose tools as well that really reflect the values that you have. I did not show a version of Claude here today, but Claude is also an excellent tool. There are many other tools available that are using different types of open source framing. Most of the companies are publishing either commitments on environmental impact or starting to report on their environmental impact given some of the AI usage, the data centers that they're using as well. So I would really suggest if that's a key concern, and it's obviously it is not something insignificant to look at the policies and the commitments that each of the organizations and companies are making before you determine which tool is reflective of the values that you have. I know we're running out on time. I don't know, Stephen, if there's any last question that you would want us to like highlight before we head out.
Yeah, I did see something about an AI policy, right?
Mhm.
I think a lot of what we've talked about, especially around even sharing passwords or the way or privacy concerns and things like that, a lot of that a lot of that information should be included in an AI policy for your organization, right? So it's about when you making a decision to step into the use of a tool like this, I mean, one of the big headlines that we're putting out there is that it really needs to be done in a thoughtful way, and having the idea of that policy level understanding of how the tool will be used in your nonprofit is super critical. And there are a lot of resources. TechSoup, as Trudy mentioned, has one. There's a lot of other resources and a lot of great discussion out there too.
Totally.
So I would just say immerse yourself in the conversation around this stuff, and the elements of AI and its use are going to become apparent to you that are most meaningful. So that's the last thing I'd say.
Totally. And I just want to say thank you so much for the time today. I'm really excited that, we were able to share some of these things, and hopefully you guys feel a little bit more enabled today to leverage and use AI to practically get started yourself. I'm going to pass it back to David. And I just wanted to note that we did share our AI policy and a template. So there's an example of TechSoups as well as a template. It's in the slides that are on your LMS. But again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to Stephen and I at any point. So thank you again, and I will pass it back to David.
On behalf of AFP Global, I would like to thank you for your participation in today's webinar live stream. Please take a moment to complete our survey, which helps us program future events. Please join us for our next webinar, CCF Today, revisiting last year's research in a new national context, made possible through the support of the AFP Foundation for Philanthropy, on March 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern. This concludes today's stream. Thank you and have a great day.